This week on Painting Lines.
Where do you think these guys individually stack up all time? Either Alcaraz or Sinner could hypothetically beat Nadal at his best on clay.
Like Djokovic is a great mover and is able to get the ball back, but I think Alcaraz just does it better.
Ready? Welcome back to Painting Lines. Last week we broke down the second half of Wimbledon, and this week, with the tennis schedule kind of scattered all around the world, we wanted to discuss a more impactful topic for tennis overall, which is Alcaraz and Sinner. Obviously, these two guys have completely separated themselves over the past 2 years. So today we wanted to briefly discuss what they've accomplished so far, our predictions for the next couple of years, and then get into how we think they'll stack up in the long term when it's all said and done, comparing them to these other legends of the game. So to kick things off, I just wanted to pose a question to you, Eric, that a former guest, Parth, actually mentioned to me that I hadn't been thinking about. Even though I realized that Sinner had made the past four finals, I didn't think about the fact that Sinner was technically 1 point away from joining Djokovic and Rod Laver as the only players in the Open era to win four slams in a row. Considering this, do you think there's a little bit too little or too much hype surrounding the world number one? Because when I thought about this, I was like, I feel like there isn't maybe enough hype for him almost accomplishing something that would have immediately written him into the history books.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. So being number one in the world is such a big feat. And I remember Casper Ruud had the chance to do it as well. But he said he would have felt weird if he was number one, not winning a slam. Zverev, same deal. I think could have been number one without having won a slam. So I think granted, there is too much hype around being number one. I think it is a big feat, but I also think that what you just mentioned got severely overlooked because I didn't even know that. And I think that goes to show more of a top line than like consistency, right? Because we've talked about the tour kind of favors players who play more. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're better, but rankings wise, I feel like you can kind of game the system.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot about consistent performance, but it also does, you can reach higher levels based on performances at certain times of the year. I know that some players, like they reach, if you reach number one, but aren't a year end number one, it clearly means that you succeeded at one part of the season more than another.
Definitely. So what do you think? Do you get anything? I know you get something for being year-end number one, but as far as being number one at some point in your career, I know there may not be a trophy or anything, but do you get maybe like a bonus or
I think it's
something with
just
the
the bragging
ATP?
rights, right?
Just the bragging
You're
rights?
known forever as one of only, I think right now, based on the ATP, there's only 20 some ever number one since they came up with it in the early 1970s. I want to say late 1960s. So you're just put into a very elite club and you have that forever. I mean, you have guys like Pat Rafter that were only it for like a week or two, but they still were the number one player in the world.
Yeah, definitely. But what about you? What do you think?
I think it's overlooked for sure. I think that he came way closer to this than people actually thought about, because we've talked about players like, oh, obviously Federer was a match away a couple of times. Djokovic was a match away from doing the single year calendar slam where he won all four. But even though players have gotten within one match of it, the fact that Sinner was only literally 1 point away from doing it is so crazy. And I don't think people are talking about how stupendous that is, I guess.
Yeah, no, it is quite a thing that he didn't achieve it. That's the thing.
He
That's
didn't
why no one's
achieve it,
talking about it.
but I think that it's still worth mentioning for sure.
Okay, I see.
But anyway, I just want to briefly touch on the history of these two guys before we jump into what we think about their future and kind of talk about their different ascensions to the top. Because obviously, we had Sinner. He had a breakout year in 2019 when he's really young. He started winning challengers, started playing in tour events at age 17, and then ended up winning the next gen finals over Deminar and breaking into the top 100. But then he kind of took a couple of years to mature because he was kind of a gangly guy and wasn't fully grown into his body, I think. In 2020, he won his first title. 2021, he continued to rise, peaking in the top 10. The next year, he was another consistent top player. He dropped down a little bit in the rankings, but was still kind of a threat at these bigger tournaments. And then all of a sudden, in that second half of 2023, he went from a guy that was like a solid player at the top to arguably the best in the world, winning the Masters in Canada, beating Djokovic in the ATP finals and competing for the ATP finals title. And then the rest is history. In 2024, he just took that next step and was nigh unbeatable for the entire year. And he's just continued that into 2025 despite his ban. But then on the other hand, you compare that to Alcaraz, where his was more of like a meteoric rise. He didn't have that plateau that Sinner had briefly, where it feels as though everything about Alcaraz is preceded by, oh, he's the youngest player to have done this. He's the youngest player to have won this slam, to have made this far in a slam, to have been the number one at this point. And I think that was just shown in the fact that in 2020, he made his tour level debut at the age of 16. But in 2021, he went from number 141 all the way to the top 35 and won a title and the next gen finals. But then already by the end of 2022, he went from top 35 to winning a slam and being the number one player in the world. So, Erik, I want to know if you can briefly summarize a why answer for us. Do you know what it was about Alcaraz that you think made him more immediately ready for the tour compared to Sinner?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. So you had mentioned it earlier. You said Sinner was pretty gangly. I think Alcaraz was just, I think he developed a lot faster into his body. People were comparing Alcaraz to a younger Rafa. Like, remember that just kind of very strong, athletic look, whereas Sinner looked like he would blow over on the court if it was a windy day, like extremely skinny. Um, I think the cramping and the fitness as well. I think Sinner, that was more of an issue than it was Alcaraz too. Like, I think the fact that it took longer for Sinner to grow into his body, he was more prone to injuries and just kind of lack of fitness. The second thing, I think Alcaraz is just naturally more talented. Like, when it's all said and done, he came onto the tour and was just immediately one of the best movers on tour already. Like, he is a counter puncher. I would say like that's kind of his primary playing style. And when it comes to that, you have to be more athletic. Whereas Sinner, his playing style is like, bludgeoning forehands and being more meticulous. So I feel like that takes more of a process because it's um, more
Technical?
technical. Exactly. Whereas like, all right, the more reps you do it, the better you get. Whereas Alcaraz, I think he's just better on the fly. And I think he's able to produce magic. So there's that component. And then lastly, I think Juan Carlos Ferrero and the team that was supporting Alcaraz, like they were with him from the very beginning. And I think that goes a long way as far as like getting him prepared mentally, just being on tour, life on tour, playing like Juan Carlos Ferrero, extremely successful career. And
Yeah. Former
just the
world number
fact,
one.
world number one, Roland Garros title. And he's also suffered a lot of adversity too. Like, he had a pretty up and down career with injuries. So I feel like he's just bringing his wisdom and knowledge to Alcaraz early on, which allowed him to excel faster than Sinner.
Yeah, and then on the other side with Sinner, you can kind of see that once he brought in Darren Cahill and he had that team around him, that's really when his success started to go to the next level, right? So kind of shows how important the team is. And I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, my analysis is exactly the same, right? Alcaraz comes onto the tour and he's able to rely on this style of pure athleticism and getting around the court and producing magic, like you said. Whereas Sinner, it's all about those technical shots and his ability to refine his game into a very, like you said, meticulous style.
Right. I mean, I know we always draw these comparisons, but it's like Roger and Rafa, right? So Rafa came onto the scene very early, whereas I think, he won a slam as a teenager, whereas Roger, I think, won his first slam at like 22, 23 years old. So it's just, the time it takes to get there. Like, when Roger was coming up, he and Hewitt, trained together, and Hewitt found much more success earlier on than Roger did. And I think like over the long run, though, it just took time and time to develop, and you can draw that comparison to Sinner.
100%. Yeah. But anyway, let's jump into the current state of tennis. Obviously, we're talking about two guys that just competed in the last two slams, but just looking at them individually, you have one guy that's won 5 slams with Alcaraz, the other's won 4. And between the two of them, they have won the last 7 slams as well as 8 of the last 9. So I want to ask you this, just based on what they've done so far. Where do you think this rivalry stacks up in the record books already, considering rivalries like Fadal, and Borg versus McEnroe. Where do you think this rivalry is stacking up?
So that's a pretty loaded question because I think right now people are stacking it up to be compared to a Fedal and Borg McEnroe rivalry, but they've only played each other twice in Slam finals. So it kind of depends. I think we'll be able to give you a better answer in a couple years when hopefully they play each other in a lot more slams down the road. But for the most part, I think the rivalry is exactly what we want because of the contrasting play styles, personalities, just kind of like they're from different countries. So I think people love to draw the narrative, and I think they fit that mold too.
Yeah, I think it has all the ingredients, like you said, for a great rivalry. But what made obviously Federer versus Nadal so special was the longevity. Like you said, they played in so many finals, so many matches, and like you said, this one's only happened a few times. So we got to wait and see. But I think, like you said, a lot of great ingredients for this to go well in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also an interesting rivalry because when Federer found success earlier on in his career, Nadal wasn't challenging him, right? Like he was, I think he had won maybe 4 or 5 slams before Rafa started like actually competing with him. And with these two, they kind of came up around the same time, right? Like Alcaraz found success earlier on in Sinner, but still, it's not like Sinner's coming in and dethroning Alcaraz, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at it, right, I think Federer won, he what, 2003 Wimbledon, and then he won, I think, a slam in 2004, and then, or a couple slams in 2004, right?
Yeah.
And then 2004 to 2007, he was dominant, and Nadal emerged as just this clay court dominant player. Obviously, at such a young age, was winning these French Open titles. And then all of a sudden, I think 2008, you look at Wimbledon, where there was kind of that flip of the switch where all of a sudden Nadal was able to beat Federer on grass. And that kind of brought it to a different level of the rivalry where all of a sudden it was not just a competition on clay courts where Nadal was winning everything and Federer was winning everywhere else. It felt like now all of a sudden they both could win on the different surfaces.
Yeah, and I just got the chills from you talking about that. It's just that's what made it so amazing. So I don't think we're seeing like exact parallels, but I do think for as long as these guys are playing each other, it doesn't matter as much about, what they do during the season, like however many titles they win. I think the rivalry is mostly what they do against each other.
Yeah. How do you think the rivalry is going to develop over like the next 5 years? Do you think a certain player is going to develop better? Do you think one player is going to start to dominate it? Obviously, Sinner finally got a win after a bunch of close calls, almost beating Alcaraz. Now he has that win. Do you think that's going to build into some momentum for him?
I think Sinner will remain dominant for the next year, call it, but I do think that this will breathe a new fire in Alcaraz because right now there's kind of an advantage, I would say, of being kind of at the bottom trying to dethrone someone or trying to climb the hill. Because when you're at the top, it's hard to fend people off. Now, I feel like Alcaraz doesn't have as much pressure and he's kind of going into it as like, all right, how do I beat Sinner? It's not so much about working on his own game, it's strategizing on how to beat Sinner at his game. And I think with his coach, as I mentioned before, they're going to really sit down because in that Netflix documentary, it kind of showed Alcaraz was, I'm not going to say he's not a hard worker because he's an extremely hard worker, but he also likes to go out. He likes to have fun. He likes to talk to girls. I feel like if he's going to want to, beat Sinner, he's got to have to lock in because I don't think Sinner is doing as much extracurricular activities as Alcaraz. So I think it'll go back and forth. I think we'll continue to see Sinner for the short term, but I do think that Alcaraz will bounce back and start beating him again. And then Sinner will have that advantage of being able to kind of dethrone Alcaraz.
Yeah, but I think you also kind of get into the Shaq versus Kobe argument, right? Where Kobe was always locked in and he was the hardest worker ever and he never had any like fun. He didn't go out, he just was locked in on basketball. And then you look at Shaquille O'Neal, obviously, massive personality, having a bunch of fun, enjoying his life. I think there's a part of it where it's like, do you want to be so locked in that you maybe get an extra 5% better? versus enjoying your life while you're on the tennis career. And there's also the aspect of some people need to blow off that steam and they need to get their mind off of it, and that actually helps them get better. And if they were only focused on tennis, they wouldn't be as successful.
No, you have a point because I feel like if Alcaraz was not blowing off steam, he'd be burnt out, right?
Yeah,
Like he started this when he was a little kid and he's just like tennis has been his life. But I feel like his coaches don't necessarily understand. Like his coaches are so hard on him and try to tell him like exactly to be like Djokovic, for example, which is totally different. Not everyone thinks that way, like has that mentality. But I don't know, where do you see the rivalry?
well, I think, yeah, it's going to depend on how Alcaraz can figure out and come back from this loss in the Wimbledon final. I think that's going to be the determining factor, because you saw what Sinner did. Sinner had a heartbreaking loss, and he came back and was even stronger and was dominant through Wimbledon outside of that Dimitrov match. Can Alcaraz do that same thing and come back even stronger after this loss, where he was the defending champion for 2 years and now Sinner is taking that step up? Can Alcaraz come back and continue to be a challenger for these big titles? So I think that's going to determine his mindset. And if he can't rebound, this could be a one-sided rivalry over the coming years.
Yeah, well, it should even out, right? Because Alcaraz had in the last like 5 out of 6 times.
100%. Yeah. But I think, like you were saying, also with just going back to the off court aspect, I think you see in their personalities that Alcaraz does need that, because you see the joy Alcaraz brings to the court. I think it's unlike almost any other player, right? He looks like he's having so much fun playing tennis. And if he didn't have that release, it maybe wouldn't be as fun for him.
Yeah, definitely. There's a great quote. I think it's Djokovic, but it's just like I'm happy I just get to go out there and hit a tennis ball, for my job. So I think
100%.
I think that's the mentality that Alcaraz does kind of bring to it, where he is genuinely enjoying what he's doing out there. And then once it becomes too much of a burden on him, that's when he stops having fun. Thus, that's when he stops playing well.
100%. Yeah. But speaking of the next 5 years, do you think there's going to be another challenger like a Djokovic that comes into this scenario? Do you think that Fonseca or Mensik or even someone like Shelton could step in and become a third piece of this trifecta here, I guess?
I do. I do. I'm a big proponent of that cliche saying where history doesn't repeat itself, but it often tends to rhyme. And we're going to draw similarities to Roger and Rafa and then Djokovic. Djokovic came in there, he challenged them, and I do think there will be someone, a third person that'll come onto the scene. Someone young though. I don't think it'll be a Zverev, a Deminar, someone who's been on tour for a bit. I think it'll be someone young. I think like Fonseca, Mensik, potentially Shelton, just not quite yet. I think we're still about like 2 to 4 years out from a real potential challenger.
Yeah, they're just so separated at this point that
Hmm.
you're going to need to see someone rise through the rankings and take that step up to be on their level. But speaking on other people that have commented on these two players, John McEnroe made a comment recently that really stood out to me, which was that he feels that either Alcaraz or Sinner could hypothetically beat Nadal at his best on clay. I just want to hear what are your thoughts on this, because it just is a very bold claim, I think, from McEnroe.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised that McEnroe even said this because I feel like older players tend to kind of side with like other older players. Like for example, on Nothing Major, Query, Isner, Johnson, Sock, those guys will always pick Rafa over anyone else, like in these hypothetical situations. And I think that's just because they played with Rafa and they were kind of that generation. Like they don't really give credit to the next generation, which there's nothing wrong with. I'm just saying it might be like a little bit of a logical fallacy. So I'm surprised McEnroe is even saying this, but I don't think it's that unreasonable of a take here. I mean, um, of course they could beat Rafa, right? Like any given day, anyone could beat Rafa on clay. It's happened before, but especially these two, right? Like I think the question becomes how many times would they beat him over, say, like a 10 match series? Because I don't think Rafa has seen a forehand like Sinner's. Maybe Del Potro back in the day, but that's going to be something that Rafa will have to get used to. And then Rafa playing prime Rafa playing Alcaraz is he'd be like basically playing himself as far as, playing against a retriever, someone who's able to move and get stuff back. So the short answer is yes, I do think that they could beat Prime Rafa, but out of 10 times, I think maybe five.
Yeah, I mean, I got to disagree, to be honest.
You don't think so?
I think they like you said, I think they could beat him, but five I think is an over. I would give each of them maybe 2 out of 10
Oh,
because I think
wow.
Rafa on clay. I completely agree with that Medvedev quote that it's maybe the hardest thing to do to beat him in all of sports. You look at how dominant Rafa was over his career. Yes, obviously Sinner and Alcaraz are next level players, but you're saying that over Nadal's 14-year or whatever it is, 18-year career, he didn't face players with great forehands. He didn't face players that were great movers. The fact that Nadal was able to execute 14 French Opens just shows that he was at a godly level on clay. And I think the fact that you're already discounting that this quickly is pretty insane.
So a counter to the forehand argument, I don't think so because I think you can bring in the like it's not an apples to apples comparison because of racket technology and just developments in the swing, right?
Yeah, I mean Federer's
I
forehand was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable, but I do think that Sinners is faster.
Sinner maybe hits his harder, but I think it's he also has a game where he sits more at the baseline. You look at imagine it this way: a guy can throw 100-mile-an-hour fastball from the regular pitcher's mound, and then you look at a little leaguer that can throw an 85-mile-an-hour fastball from 20 feet closer, right? I feel like that's the comparison here because Federer was able to just crowd the baseline and force you to see quicker shots. Maybe Sinner hits the ball harder, but he hits it, I feel like, from further back, sits further back on the baseline.
Yeah, that's a good point. I see what you're saying there. But as far as the movers, yes, I do agree with you there. Like it's not like Alcaraz would be the best mover that Nadal faces, but I do think he's kind of a he's like it's like playing against Djokovic, but with more upside. Like Djokovic is a great mover and is able to get the ball back and turn defense into offense, but I think Alcaraz just does it better. And maybe he doesn't do it better per se, but he does it in a flashier way. Like it's more glitzy.
Well, Alcaraz, yeah, maybe has some of the most spectacular shots I've ever seen. I mean,
Right.
that's one thing about Alcaraz that stands out and is probably why he's like the LeBron of the tennis world right now because yes, he's like the most popular player, but he's also probably my favorite player to watch because he produces shots that I remember specific shots from his matches because of how special they are. You watch a Sinner match and you're like, wow, he dominated that guy. Like you watch him play Medvedev in Miami last year or whatever it was, and you're like, oh my God, he made Medvedev look completely lost on the court. But I don't remember any specific shots he produced from that match. Whereas Alcaraz, I remember that shot he had in the Roland Garros semifinal against Djokovic where he ran around the ball and slid and hit the passing shot. Or I remember that shot he hit against Sinner in that Roland Garros final where Sinner crushed the return and then Alcaraz hit a ridiculous slice back to the corner. Like he's able to produce shots that stand out like a highlight dunk might in the NBA. But I don't you don't want to say, oh, my favorite player is this guy because it's like the easiest pick, right? But
Mhm.
I feel like he is the most exciting guy to watch, and that's what makes him so unique of a tennis player.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think what you were saying is the beautiful part about this sport, how you can find joy and pleasure in watching Alcaraz play and watching for the like the flash versus watching Sinner play and watching like the pure just dominance. And I will
Yeah.
say in Sinner's defense, he is like while you may not remember specific shots per se, he is starting to really develop and hone in on that like running slap forehand across court. Like I feel like he starts to do that a lot more. So when I think of a Sinner shot, that's the one I think of, but it's not like a single one that I'm like, oh wow, that one shot. It's like, oh, he's getting good at that shot. And I'll watch a Sinner match, and get excited when I see that.
100%. I mean, I think a Sinner produces great shots. Like, I'm not saying he's not an insane shot maker because he definitely is. It's just like the ones Alcaraz does are so unbelievable that you have to remember them.
Right. Yeah. There's still just shots that I'm like, how is that even humanly possible?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, but then you look at someone like Nadal. It's like Nadal's ability to hit that banana shot was just so crazy that it was like you saw him running for it and you'd be like, oh my God, he's going to hit it. And then
Yeah.
he'd pull that out and you're like, that's such an impossible shot that he
Oh,
just hit.
I know. There's that, the banana, and then there's also the like behind the back smash kind of thing, the flick
Oh,
that he would do a
100%.
lot.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But anyway, let's go on to another part of this discussion, which is the surface question. Obviously, over the past couple of years, Sinner has pretty much separated himself as the best player on hard court. But now he wins this Wimbledon title, nearly wins the Roland Garros title. And the question now, I think, is Sinner the better player on every surface? Because you can't really argue based on that Roland Garros final that Alcaraz is significantly better on clay, given how close that match was. And then Sinner wins the Wimbledon final, and he's won the last two hard court finals. Do you think that there is that separation on every surface now?
So I'll say this. I don't think it's as black and white of an answer as say like Rafa and Roger, right? Like it's clear that Rafa is better on clay, Roger's better on grass.
Yeah.
But neither game style is really specific to a certain surface. And I just think whoever is the better player at the moment is the better player on all surfaces. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. So you
And
think the surface question isn't really an aspect, like their games are all surface games, so that the surface is just like whatever they happen to be playing on that day. It doesn't actually influence it significantly.
exactly. And to answer your question, yes, I think since Sinner is the better player at the moment, he is better on every surface,
I
even
think,
clay.
yeah, I think that's a reasonable take. I think, yeah, because it's like, yes, if he's the better player, the clay isn't going to save Alcaraz like it might for a Nadal, right?
Mhm.
Where like Nadal might be a worse player in a certain year than Djokovic and still be able to pull off the win at the French Open.
Yeah, exactly. What about you? So yeah, you agree as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great take. And then going a little bit into the future, what are your thoughts on sort of the injury concerns? Because obviously, at the ages of 22 and 23, both of these guys have dealt with, I'd say, a lot of injuries given how young they are. And while injuries and problems like this aren't uncommon, like the big four also had a lot of injuries, it's still kind of worrying given their age. So, do you think this is going to be a problem in the long term?
Unfortunately, yes, I do. You know, especially the way these guys play. It's like they sell out every single point. Even Sinner, like he's a little fragile still, so I feel like little falls like the one he took at Wimbledon could end up being a big deal. And Alcaraz just plays such grinding tennis too that like he produces a lot of wear and tear on his body. So there's that, but then there's also just the length of schedule. You know, these guys play a lot of tennis. It's just inevitable, unfortunately, that injuries are going to happen. I just think it's going to be how they can bounce back and deal with them.
Yeah, and I think part of that is what we're seeing now, which is a lot of players kind of skipping tournaments and not playing just so that they can preserve their body a little bit more. Because we obviously saw with someone like Rafa, bringing him up today, but he suffered so many injuries with like his knees and stuff like that, just because of I think how grindy his game is and how much he played.
Yeah, while fans may not want to see their favorite players pull out of tournaments, I think it is better for the fans in the long run because it actually preserves the players' careers and hopefully adds some longevity to that. And we can see them play even longer versus
Yeah.
them just like getting out there when they're injured and hurting themselves even more.
Yeah, it's like you get an extra two tournaments this year, but their career gets cut 2 years short. Which one would you
Yeah.
rather have?
Yeah. Give me the 2 years.
Exactly,
It
exactly.
depends, unless I have tickets to the. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking on legacy, there's also one thing we have to bring up, which is the Sinner doping scandal has to be addressed. And even though the decision is that like there was no fault on his part, it's and his kind of punishment was a slap on the wrist, in my opinion, given the timing of it. Missed 3 months, like in between all the slams. I do still think this is going to be a point of discussion for his entire career and is going to impact his legacy after he retires. So, how much do you think this is going to have an impact on the discussion about his career?
I think a good amount. I think you already have people who don't even want to hear the argument that, he wasn't at fault, right? Like I remember talking to someone after the French Open and was like, "Yeah, what a match, oh, like who do you want or who did you want?" He's like, "Alcaraz, are you kidding? Like F that cheater Sinner." And it's like that's just unfortunately he's going to be tainted like that. Like people are always going to have in their head, maybe they're not as open to actually hearing arguments and learning. They just figured, all right, this is what I'm going to think about him. So I think to the true tennis fan who can look past that, I don't think it will have much impact, but there will kind of still be like an asterisk on his career, unfortunately, because of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of one of the problems with the headline news we get in today's world, where people see a headline and they just take that as the truth forever, right? That's the
Mhm.
problem, I think, also with when people get accused of something and then it gets retracted. Nobody sees the retraction headline, right? They only
Yeah.
see the accusation headline. And so, like, if someone had said, "Oh, Sinner accused of doping," it would be the same thing as if he had, right?
Right.
It's just, I think, a problem that we don't, like you said, look past it. Look at the fact that it was found that he was not at fault in this situation. It was because of this other person. He didn't choose to do it. I think that you look at things like that, and if you actually delve into the situation, it's not actually as big of a thing as people want to act like it is.
So the doping itself, yes, not as big as it is. But let me ask you this. All right, doping aside, what about the way that it was handled? I feel like that's another thing that people are pretty pissed about. It's like, okay, there are other players who failed drug tests without, giving their due process that Sinner got, where he had the chance to do it. So people are saying that he had that advantage because he was the number one player. The ATP kind of covered for him. So that's another thing. Like, even though the doping he may not have like, actually done PEDs, but it was also the way that it was handled.
Well, I think that's just how sort of all legal processes work, right? I mean, look at it this way. If someone gets accused of burglary, right? And they have no money and they get assigned the public defender, they're probably not going to get the same level of defense as if they already have a bunch of money and they're able to hire an expensive lawyer to defend them, right?
Hmm.
It's the same thing here, right? It's like Sinner has the advantages because of who he is, and that gives him these benefits. It's like it just isn't always going to be fair. But it also comes back to the argument I've made in the past, which is two wrongs don't make a right. People are arguing, oh, Sinner should have received the same unfair treatment that other players have. That's not the right way to look at this. It's like Sinner, we should treat everyone like Sinner was treated, should be, I think, the argument instead.
Yeah, I agree. And it is unfortunate that people just kind of, he gets grouped into being a doper without, actually getting to hear his chance. And then once he proves himself, people are mad that he got the chance to prove himself, right? It's
100%.
like, come on.
Exactly. But anyway, one of the last things here I want to talk about is the comparison to the big three. And for me, this is how I break it down, because I know you've said a lot today. Alcaraz reminds you of Djokovic with his counterpunching style. To me, Sinner is more like Djokovic because Sinner has a little bit more of a rally ball style. While he doesn't rally as much as sort of Djokovic does, he blasts the ball, but he blasts it in sort of a pattern. He blasts it cross court, then he switches it up. Whereas Alcaraz is, to me, kind of a mix of Federer and Nadal, where he has the ability to come up and be aggressive and play creative shots like the slice, but he also has the Nadal aspect where he can move all around the court and produce these spectacular defensive shots. So, what is your thought on that?
Yeah, I'm liking that comparison you made with Sinner and Djokovic because I feel like they're strictly business type of players. They're the type of guys who get on the court, they have a strategy, and they're not going to stray away from it. Even if it doesn't work, they're going to get out there and essentially pound the ball, get into long rallies, and make you think that you're in the rally when in reality they're thinking two, three shots ahead of you and can pounce on that short ball. But I don't know. I mean, do we have to draw exact comparisons to the big three? Like, I'd like to think that maybe they each kind of have their own unique play styles. And I'm wondering, were the big three compared to players in the past too? Or is this, kind of a newer thing that the big three set the precedent, set the standard, and now everyone after them has to be compared to them.
Well, I think they probably were compared to players in the past. I mean, you see it in all sports, right? Like you look at the NFL draft, what's one of the first things they come up with for every player is, oh, who's their NFL comparison? I think
Hmm.
when you have a player emerging into a pro sports scene, you're always going to look to the past to be like, oh, who is this guy play like? Especially for like if you are trying to play against them. Okay, I'm going to play against this guy. Who else can I watch that plays a similar style? And what worked against that player that might work against this player. So I
Yeah.
think that's part of it. But I definitely agree they have their own unique aspects. Sinner, like you said, has an unbelievable forehand. Nobody can really replicate that type of power off the forehand side. And then Alcaraz just produces this magic where you can't really look at a player and say, oh, yeah, that guy has an Alcaraz style where he just produces these unbelievable shots all the time.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Let's take Alcaraz and Sinner and then come up with one quality from each of the big three that reminds you of them. Like for example, let's see, how does Alcaraz compare to Federer? What is one thing? Like maybe his like flair on the court and his amazing shots. How does he remind you of Nadal? His scrappiness. What about Djokovic? What
I
is
think
that's
what
tough.
I don't. I actually disagree. I think, like you said, I think it's similar to the scrappiness. I think it's the ability to turn defense into offense. What's the classic Djokovic shot is you look at him at Wimbledon sliding full extension
Split,
backhand
yeah.
passing shot, right?
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of something that Alcaraz might do.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it comes in is that ability to turn these ridiculous defensive positions into offense.
And how about Sinner? What is one thing about Djokovic that reminds you of Sinner?
I think Sinner is just the ability to sit on the baseline and just completely take over a rally.
What
I
about Federer?
I think Federer is his ability to move forward and dominate with his forehand.
And
And
Nadal?
then Nadal, I think that's probably the toughest comparison of them all is comparing Sinner to Nadal. But I think in the end, it comes down to probably, I don't know. Do you have one for that?
I'm trying to think. I mean, Nadal was kind of underrated at the net. Like he had amazing net skills, but he's not really known for it. Whereas maybe Sinner, kind of same deal. Like Sinner gets the reputation of being a great baseliner, but also has great hands at the net too. So maybe that comparison.
Underrated aspect.
Underrated at the net. Yeah.
I think those are some
I mean, it's
interesting
tough. It
thoughts.
was tough to pull it out. Yeah. It's not like
100%.
anything really sticks out about
Yeah. Like you said,
Nadal
they're all
and
unique
Sinner.
players.
Yeah, they are. They are.
But let's get into the big questions here to wrap this up. Right now, where do you think these guys individually stack up all time?
In a way, like top 10 of all
Top 10,
time,
top
top five.
20, top whatever you think it is.
Oh, I mean, right now, I kind of group them together. So let's say they're both in the top eight, I think.
You think top 8
All right, wait,
already?
are you talking potential or
No, no, no.
already?
I'm saying
Like,
right
okay,
now. Like if they
already?
retired today.
Oh, no, not top eight, not top eight. Definitely top 15, no
Yeah.
doubt about it.
I
It's
think I
just,
think top 20 is where I would put them right now because if they retired today, right?
mhm,
Like if this isn't saying oh they have a mediocre rest of their career. It's like if they retired today, they would be top 20 all time because they had an incredible peak and while it was short, it was really spectacular.
yeah,
But now let's ask the second question, kind of what you were answering before. Where do you think they're going to stack up by the end of their careers?
top five, easily.
So you think it's going to be big 3 and Alcaraz and Federer or Alcaraz
Yes.
and Sinner?
Yes, I do. Because I think right now we're in such a low competition field that they're going to just stack or rack up titles and achievements in the next 3 to 4 years,
Yeah. I mean, I think
really without anyone stopping them.
what makes it unique is like I know at the end of you look at the 90s, right? And it's like Agassi and Sampras were winning most of the titles. Maybe they weren't dominating at the French Open, but they were getting a lot of major titles. Uh, but then you look into the early 2000s, you had guys like Querton, guys like Safin, Hewitt, all these guys emerging and winning a couple titles before the big 3 really took over and started dominating the majors. The difference here is that we went straight from the big 3 era right into these new 2 players. So we're getting a different sort of look at the tennis world where where there's no period of flux. It's just going straight from one period of domination to another period.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's crazy when you look at it like that. But what about you? Where are you thinking they stack up?
I kind of agree. I mean, based on what they've shown so far in their careers, it's hard to put them anywhere other than in the conversation with those big three guys and being like, there's going to be a conversation about, is Alcaraz better than Nadal? Is Sinner better than Federer? Those type of arguments are going to happen in the future if they continue on this trajectory.
Yeah, this might be a pretty sensitive question for you, but where do you think they stack up against Andy Murray right now?
I think if they retired today, they would be below Murray all time. But I think if they retired, if they win a few more majors over the next couple of years, they're going to be miles ahead of him.
God, I had to ask.
Yeah, well, because I think just the right now what's working in Murray's favor is exactly what you talked about earlier, which is the level of competition, right? If Murray was playing in a different era, people always argue, I think, against him based on his slam count, but
Mhm.
you go, okay, who is he playing against for his entire career? The three best players of all time, pretty much consensus, right?
Yeah.
So that argument, that aspect kind of bolsters where he ranks all time right now. But if you look at Alcaraz and Sinner, if they win 10 titles each, you can't put them behind Murray.
No, yeah. And they're just going to get even better and better because I truly believe that iron sharpens iron and they like this rivalry is going to be good. It's going to result in better players overall because they're just going to keep trying to get better.
100%. Yeah. But anyway, that about wraps up our discussion of the future of Alcaraz and Sinner. So you ready to hop into segments here?
Yes, I am. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Sounds good. What's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
I saw your favorite player, Nick Kyrgios, is returning to tennis at the Washington Open. He's playing doubles with Monfils, actually right now as we speak. So let's see how he's doing.
This is a tough one for me to look at because I'm really not a fan of Kyrgios, but I love Monfils as a player. He's so exciting, so fun. Like Alcaraz, he has so much enjoyment. It looks like when he's on the court. So it's tough. I don't know whether I want them to win or want them to lose.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, I just checked and they lost. They kind of got smacked 6-2, 6-2.
I mean, it's not surprising though, is it? You look at them, and Monfils isn't a classic doubles player, and Kyrgios is returning after a big hiatus again. So, not super shocking to see them out super early.
Yeah, I think this was one of those things from the tournament that, wanted to sell tickets, right?
Yeah, you wanted to get people to go see doubles.
Yeah, it would have been interesting. But yeah, no, this was Kyrgios's first match back since the Miami Open back in March. So I don't know. We were kind of talking about, is his career over? I think we might just see him sporadically in these tournaments, maybe playing doubles. But yeah, I
Too
don't
well,
think
he just wanted to delay long enough that he didn't have to play with Ackman.
yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna keep bringing that up for so long.
I'm sure. I would like to see some kind of Sinner Kyrgios exhibition match though, because
Dude,
I want to see Kyrgios get put in his place.
yeah, I mean, I think Sinner's just like he's not on my level.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's really nothing for Sinner to gain there at all.
100%. Yeah. If he
Maybe if they
dominates
do,
him, it's like it's what was expected. And if he loses, it's like Kyrgios can just talk trash forever.
oh my God, for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
All right, what about you? What did you see this week?
Yeah. I saw kind of one of the things we were talking about earlier, which is that the Canadian Open has just been crippled by withdrawals this year. Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Draper all pulling out of the tournament. And I think it's mainly because they want to avoid too much fatigue and creating injuries, especially in the build-up to the U.S. Open. But it just sucks for the Canadian Open, right? Then again, it does present an interesting opportunity for someone else to get their first Masters title, especially because you look at a lot of the guys that have won Masters 1000 titles in the past, they've kind of struggled with consistency lately. So you wonder whether this could be a great opportunity for someone like Poprin last year to step up and take this chance.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you first mentioned this, I was pretty bummed as someone who likes to see top players win and not really, let the underdogs have a chance. But now when you put it like that, I am excited to see someone potentially new get a Masters 1000 and see who's gonna step up and whether or not this could be an inflection point for other players' careers. So I'm excited to see this. Even though we're not going to see the big guys, I will be excited to tune in and see who's going to potentially win it.
Yeah. I mean, who I really want to see is
Yeah, Deminar, right?
Deminar has made a final in Canada before. That would be really exciting. Another guy, Medvedev. Could this be a chance for Medvedev to turn it around and get some confidence back? Maybe.
So the thing about if Medvedev wins this Masters 1000 title, I feel like this is kind of a pity title, right? It's like, all right, you're kind of older, you're getting to the point where you're not at the top of your career anymore, and you want it because these top guys are not
But
in
I don't
it.
know if it's a pity title because no one's letting him win,
No
right?
one's letting him win, yes, but it's still like I don't know. I'd be more excited to see a younger guy win it who is peaking rather than
I mean, who
troughing.
who knows? Who knows? What if Mensick can pull off a second Masters 1000? That'd be pretty wild.
That would be wild. I would love to see that.
Yeah. But anyway, how about bet of the week? What'd you go for here?
I'm going with my boy Jerome minus 120 over Munar. So this one immediately stuck out to me because Munar, clay player, Jerome, he's decent on all surfaces, but he does have a much better winning percentage on hard court. He's got the head-to-head advantage over him, even though it's only 1-0. But he's playing in the US, so I feel like he can have the crowd behind him. And this is just kind of one of those like, all right, I'm gonna go with the home favorite here at like pretty decent odds.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a pretty reasonable bet. I think the odds are pretty fair, but I would definitely go with Giron in this situation. Then again, it could be a toss up.
Hmm. How about you? Who are you taking?
I'm going with another close match. I'm going with Vukic GMP plus 100 to go 3 sets. I just think there's not much between these two. And I think they both really want it because they haven't had a ton of great results recently. So I think it could go battle to three. And especially with someone like GMP, where you may see a tiebreak. And obviously, tiebreaks are a perfect setup for either player to take the set. So I think it could go to 3 sets and then either guy could take it.
Yeah, I like that one. Especially, did you look and see if there was a tiebreaker prop? Because I'm sure if there was, it'd be negative because GMP is like associated with tiebreakers.
Yeah, I didn't see the tiebreaker prop, but I did see they've never played before, so that
Yeah.
there was nothing to go off on that aspect.
Yeah, I saw Vukic Sinner when I was at Wimbledon on center court, and man, I just felt bad for Vukic out there.
Yeah, that was a
He was
one-sided
playing
match.
tough, but it was just not going his
Hard to
way.
keep your confidence in that
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, I know.
Anyway, how about match of the week?
Match of the week, I went with Shapovalov winning the title in Los Cabos over Kovacevic. It wasn't a tight match by any means. He won 6-4, 6-2, but it was the culmination of a perfect week by Shapovalov. Didn't drop a single set the whole time. And this is a guy that I kind of rooted for a few years ago, like going up, like, oh, he's gonna be the next big thing, and then never really panned out. Injuries, just kind of inconsistent. But this was a significant match for him. It was his second title of the year, which is the first time that he's won multiple titles in a season. I think he's at like 5 titles now.
I think he's a
But
four. I
anyway,
think he doubled his
4.
titles this year. Yeah,
Wow, that's crazy. But anyway, just like going back to the match, both of these guys have one-handed backhands, which is super rare to see nowadays, especially two guys playing against each other. And just the fact that, you know, Kovacevic was in another final. He was in one earlier this year against FAA and Montpellier, couldn't get it done, but still
can't beat the
making.
Canadians.
Yeah, no, that's a great, great observation. But anyway, going back to the one-handed, like you just saw those clean one-handed backhand winners down the line that I just love seeing. So that was great. Shapo had amazing energy out there on the court, would celebrate a lot, get super pumped up. Kovacevic seemed a little flat. It just looked hot and miserable out there too. Both guys looked like they had just jumped in a pool. But anyway, happy to see both those guys in the final. I do enjoy seeing them play.
Yeah, so not necessarily about the closeness of the match, just like the style of it.
Yeah, I would say, the style and the significance of the match that made it my match of the week, not necessarily like the nail biter aspect.
Yeah.
How about you? What was your match of the week?
I'm going with a comeback. Cerundolo coming back to beat Ruud in 3. And this is
Boo.
Juan Manuel Cerundo, not Francisco.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
The younger brother. But it was Ruud's return after skipping the grass season. He won his first match against Stricker, comes into this match and immediately drops the first set. Then kind of took all the momentum, won 9 of the next 10 games, and then was obviously leading that third set 3-0, won the second set 6-1. And not only was he up 3-0, it was 2 breaks. He had already broken Cerundolo's serve twice. So it seemed like he had all the momentum. And then kind of seemed like he just took his foot off the gas. Like he lost the next point or the next game at love on his serve, then got broken again to even the set. And then it was just kind of landslided all to Cerundolo, and he took the third 6-3. So just a match with massive momentum swings. Cerundolo wins 6 the first 8 games, wins the first set 6-2. Ruud goes 9-1 in the next 10 games, and then Cerundolo goes 6-0 in the next 6 games. So just they each had their little bursts, but Cerundolo came alive at the right times.
Wow, that's crazy. Do you think this was a product of Ruud still being injured, or just like not being game ready or match ready? Or do you think he just got like outplayed, outclassed?
I think he lost. I think he mentally wasn't fully locked in. I think that's what happens. And not that it's like something that's easy to change, but I think sometimes when you win, like I said, 9 of 10 games, you're like, oh, this match is over. I've won this hard. But your opponent hasn't necessarily given up. And it can be hard to go from I already won this match to now I have to go out there and win this match, if you see what I'm saying.
No, I do. I wonder also if it had to do with maybe the cardio, like he wasn't, his fitness wasn't there, but crazy to see. That's funny that you mentioned the younger brother, because the whole time I was looking at the scores, seeing Cerundolo, I was just like, oh, well, he lost to Cerundolo in Miami, so like I'm not that surprised. But the younger brother, man, that's not cool.
We almost had a great runs for both Cerundolos this week. They were both in the semis of their respective 250s that they were in, but unfortunately, Cerundolo ended up losing in the semis, and then Francisco ended up losing in the semis, and Juan Manuel ended up losing in the final.
Wow, nice. I really want to see these guys play each other. I feel
that would be a kind of a cool
eventually,
experience.
Right?
100%. Yeah. I'm sure they'll play like in Argentina at some point.
Yeah, definitely. All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.